Today's episode of The Watch is brought to you by Mack Weldon. Yeah, it's time to talk underwear, people. With their smart design, premium fabrics, and the simple shopping experience, Mack Weldon underwear is definitely better than whatever you are wearing. I say you because I'm rocking Mack Weldon right now, and it's making me fly like an eagle. I feel like I'm 10 feet tall. I don't know why. It's just something about it. In addition to looking great and feeling great, all Mack Weldon products are crafted with natural fibers that have built-in performance capabilities, so they work hard too. They even have a line of silver underwear and shirts that are naturally antimicrobial, which means they eliminate odor. All that, and they're shipped right to your door. You don't have to go down and be like, where's your underwear section, sir? I would like to purchase some. If you don't like your first pair from Mack Weldon, keep it. They'll still refund you, no questions asked. Go to MackWeldon.com and get 20% off your first purchase using promo code WATCH. Today's episode of The Watch is also brought to you by Redbox. School's out for summer! And Redbox has the video games to keep you entertained. With over 40,000 locations nationwide, you can rent and return anywhere, and better yet, you'll get a free one-night game rental from Redbox when you use the promo code WATCH. Swing by a box in your neighborhood, or if you want to make sure the game you want is there when you arrive, reserve it online at redbox.com/games. Offer is valid through July 6th, 2017, and is subject to additional terms. Charges apply for additional nights. Payment card required. Getting into video games has never been so easy.
I need support staff to clear the room. Stand up and walk, now.
Hello and welcome to The Watch. My name is Chris Ryan. I'm an editor at TheRinger.com, and joining me in the studio, Luke, we're going to have company. It's Andy Greenwald and Sean Fennessey.
Hey, man.
Hey, what's going on? Nobody else is in the studio with us.
No, it is not Take My Daughter to Work Day. I promise you.
Just the three of us here, sitting quietly.
Guys, welcome to The Watch, the re-up, the Thursday edition of America's favorite non-binge mode podcast. My name is Chris Ryan. I'm joined by two of my favorite people in the whole wide world.
I like that you did the loud intro. Now you're doing the NPR intro.
I'm just excited to see you guys. We wanted to get Sean on because initially we were going to have Sean just talk about his 25 best movies of the millennium.
Let me be clear. When we did that as a lark,
in the words of Richard Ford, let me be frank.
We did that as a lark on Monday. It was, first of all, very fun.
Yeah.
And it's been great seeing people respond with their list. Thanks
so much for your responses.
Thanks for the people who reminded me of Master and Commander, Far Side of the World. Great film.
Did someone put that on their list?
Yes.
Shame on them.
Some
I respect
people
that.
were really catering to Greenwald by like, what about Short Term 12, man?
What about it? Thank God someone mentioned it. But let me also just say, when I did that, I knew there would be a little knocking on our podcast door from editor-in-chief Sean Fennessey.
This is not the case. I asked Sean.
Chris asked me. But that said, in my mind, as I was listening to the podcast, I was like, I want in. I want to be a part of this. I want to be inside the mainframe as two of the best out.
As the hives erupted on your body due to our terrible cinematic choices.
No, I thought it was interesting, but we can get to that later.
Yeah, we're going to get to the Sean's 25 best movies, and we'll talk a little bit about that list. But first we wanted to talk about the news coming out of Lucasfilm this week, which is that with only a few more weeks until the completion of principal photography,
right?
The folks over at Lucasfilm, namely Kathleen Kennedy, have gotten rid of the Han Solo standalone film directors.
You don't remember their names, do you?
No, I don't. The problem is that
their names are Star-Lord.
You know what it is? They are named Phil Lord and Chris Miller.
Yeah.
And I got confused there because you guys have gotten into my head about whether it's Phil Miller and Chris Lord.
This is
really big news. This wasn't like we hired somebody, had 3 meetings with them, and we mutually decided to go our own way.
This isn't Josh Trank 2.0.
No.
This is not we hired
this is
an
not
in over his head
Wright
lunatic.
On Ant-Man. This is not Ava DuVernay on Black Panther. This is not like we had a few meetings. Maybe there was some preliminary paperwork or whatever.
These are guys who have a distinct point of view and also have an enormously successful track record at the box office. Whether you like it or dislike them, we can talk about that in a second. It is it is shocking because directors don't get fired very often this far into production.
Yeah.
They may be, quote unquote, removed later, like Gareth Edwards was on Rogue One.
Well, he wasn't removed. They just brought Tony Gilroy in to do some rewrites and to reportedly do some interior reshoots.
Semantics.
Yeah.
But he still had his name on the movie as the director. This doesn't happen that often, but this does feel to me, and I think this is one of the topics we should get into, as an inevitable, this is where this was headed, the way franchises are being stewarded, right? And before I cede the floor to a cinephile and someone with the hottest take this side of the lava planet where Anakin became Darth Vader, shouts the prequel trilogy, I just want to say that this strikes me more than a bad business decision as an extremely Los Angeles decision. And what I mean is, people in this town like go to burger places and order sushi. You know what I mean? There's a restaurant in West Hollywood called Hugo's where there's a 40-page menu, and then at the end of it, it's literally Kramer on Seinfeld doing movie phone. Why don't you just tell me what you'd like to eat? And my feeling is, if you hired Star-Lord and Chris Miller to make a Han Solo movie, you bought it. You know what I mean? Let them make their movie. It's not like you're buying a calm tactician or someone who's just going to execute the plays on the field. You're not hiring Colin Trevorrow, who just seems to by the way, who shouldn't be left to his own devices apparently, judging by what was the name of this movie he made?
The Book of Henry.
You hired guys because people like what they do and they know how to do it, and then you change your mind midstream, and that just seems absurd to me. Now I'll cede the floor.
It actually feels like a very old-fashioned decision. This is something that happened a lot more frequently in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. Yesterday I was just talking about like Tombstone, for example.
Okay.
Shot principal photography for 6 weeks with a filmmaker. They realized that person was completely wrong for the project, and then sort of under cloak and dagger, Kurt Russell took over the directing of the film. I mentioned The Island of Dr. Moreau, too.
Oh, yeah.
Where that filmmaker was removed, and then John Frankenheimer was brought in kind of halfway through, and that was a quagmire. This doesn't happen as frequently, but we know that in the Star Wars universe, this isn't the first time that they've had some issues.
Yeah.
You guys mentioned Gilroy coming in for Gareth Edwards. Also, as we know, like J.J. Abrams really kind of found The Force Awakens in the editing room.
And
they shot a ton of
he
footage.
He should have put it back.
Yeah. Well,
that was a story where Michael Arndt, who wrote Little Miss Sunshine and Toy Story, had been working on Force Awakens for a while. The reports were that the main character of Force Awakens was still Luke. Mm-hmm. The infamous never released or even shot, I don't know if it was shot, but the opening shot of Force Awakens was supposed to be Luke's hand with a lightsaber in it falling out of the sky, out
through
of space. Yeah. That one had issues. You have the Gareth Edwards, Tony Gilroy issues. You've got Trank being fired off of whatever the movie he was initially sort of talked about on.
I think it was
Boba Fett?
Boba Fett movie.
Boba Fett.
Look, I mean, there's a couple things here, and I made a snide comment about J.J. Abrams in Force Awakens. What I meant was, I think we do have a collective amnesia about that movie. I think it succeeded from a corporate standpoint, and I think a lot of us had a good time in it, and the young stars were really good. As a movie, the way we used to talk about movies, I think it's mostly a failure.
It was a great movie in 1977, yeah.
Right,
yeah.
But this is basically, we have to switch hats. If we're talking from a corporate perspective, Star Wars is one of the most valuable brands in this galaxy as well as many other galaxies far, far away.
Probably the most.
They need to be reasonable managers of this, the same way you'd want like someone at Merrill Lynch being a reasonable manager of your income. And I guess they flirt with wanting to be creative with it, but at heart, they don't want to be creative with it. They just want to make the original trilogy again and again and again and give people the same hit of the same stuff, right?
Well, it's possible.
I think that this series probably needs it's David Yates. So David Yates, initially when Harry Potter, the series started, it started by Chris Columbus, which you could say is the J.J. Abrams analog, right? And then they went through a series of, we're going to have Cuarón direct, we're going to maybe use edgy directors who bring their own sensibility to the source material. And then they settled on David Yates, who was a safe pair of hands who made incredibly entertaining, clear, comprehensible movies one after another and delivered them relatively close to what they wanted.
In a way, that was, Sean, I don't know if you'd agree with this, but that was one of the first examples of them saying, like, you know what, this is a TV show.
Yeah.
Let's make a TV show.
Right.
Let's get one guy to direct it, who knows what he's doing, who's going to hit his marks, hit his budget, and people will be fine with it. And we're not going to get too high, but we know we're not going to get too low.
There's a big difference between those two things, though, which is just that Harry Potter was an established universe with an endpoint that people knew about from the books that were clear from the world. I've heard you guys talk a lot over the last couple of years about the promise of the Star Wars universe and doing these stories, doing a Boba Fett movie, doing a Han Solo origin movie, which is really interesting. And it should theoretically be able to be done by filmmakers who have different tones, who have different looks, different styles, but that's not what we're getting.
Yeah, I mean, I think the initial idea, or at least the way Chris and I understood it, and maybe audiences in general did, is that they were going to make this new trilogy to be the spine of the universe, but then they were going to branch off of it, and there were going to be chances taken. And to be fair, whatever Rogue One was potentially going to be, whatever it could have been,
It's supposed to be a war movie.
but the last 30 minutes of it were different. They were,
Yeah.
they did have a different spirit and tone, and it was worthy. Mm-hmm. But
I think if there's one thing that's sort of dogging this, and they've brought Ron Howard in to finish Han Solo, but if there's one thing that's dogging these movies right now, it's a comprehensibility problem. It's that there seems to be, you've got Lawrence Kasdan, you've got these good screenwriters, Michael Arndt, Tony Gilroy, working on these movies, and then you have a little bit of a feeling like that they are being Benny Hanna'd into something that's ready for a release date. So you have a lot of like third acts that barely make sense, and people going from planet to planet really quickly in ways that you're just like, oh, wait, was that planet next to that planet? There are just very basic storytelling things here that feels like there might be a little too many cooks in the kitchen. Although apparently Kathleen Kennedy is the only chef that matters. Now, I guess here's my question. So if this is a franchise that has a comprehensibility problem in the first place, I guess my question is, why hire Phil Lord and Chris Miller? Because these are guys who, they've produced a lot of stuff. They've been rumored to be a part of Spider-Man movies or The Flash. I mean, they obviously are considered mainstream blockbuster filmmakers, even though I would say most of their stuff feels like you're trapped in an elevator with somebody on Adderall.
Yeah, I think the fact that they were able to translate the Lego Movie and 21 Jump Street into saleable properties makes them appealing to a big company like Disney, to Lucasfilm, to whoever is shepherding the project along. But their movies are really strange, and they take a lot of risks. Their TV shows are really strange, and they take a lot of risks. I think this movie might have made a little bit more sense with a Lord and Miller script directed by Ron Howard. That might have been a more seamless execution of this. But Kathleen Kennedy has a reputation as a very focused, controlled, specific old school Hollywood producer.
Who tends to work with veteran filmmakers.
Yes. And so when you take these risks, as we've seen, and this is a story that started 5 years ago, and Marvel made a lot of inroads in sort of plucking people from very small independent backgrounds and foisting them in. Lord and Miller are a little bit different from that. They're not quite Colin Trevorrow taking on Jurassic World, but there's something like it. And this is different for mass market IP.
Also the idea that they were going to like find this movie in the editing room, and that they were reportedly shooting lots of different kinds of takes, and that there was a kind of manic comedy element to this character, and that was turning off people like Kasdan, who were like, this is not supposed to be slapstick.
By the way, Kasdan is kind of low-key the one who's either saving this or messing it all up for other people, right?
Well, reportedly his script for Han Solo was, according to anonymous sources, the best Star Wars script ever written. That's what that was.
So Lord Miller jumped on and started doing donuts on it and commenting on the commenting. Look,
we'll never know.
Here's, I think, also why people are upset about it. Here's the only reason why I think people are upset about this, not just because it feels like their favorite toys are breaking, literally. It's not necessarily an allegiance to the sensibilities of 21 Jump Street, which, by the way, is a really strong, very good movie.
It's really funny.
But that's like 6 jokes. It's not a movie.
No, I think that one is a movie. But my point is this. The photo that was released with all of them having a wonderful time on the Millennium Falcon with Alden Ehrenreich and Woody Harrelson just seemed like what we wanted to feel. And this event seems to have ripped that photo in half like Sinead O'Connor on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, we do have a tendency to get very upset prematurely about things that we didn't get, like the Edgar Wright Ant-Man, we'll never know what it was like before this got taken away by the corporate overlords.
Yeah, personally, I was anticipating this movie, but I wouldn't say I was over the moon for it. I think people like Donald Glover getting cast for it amplified our anticipation. I think that there's only so much that Ron Howard's going to be able to change at this point anyway,
yeah, right.
So we're probably still going to get a lot of that feeling, even if you're not going to get a lot of the zaniness. This is just the cost of doing business. Star Wars is more valuable to Disney than almost anything they have in their entire portfolio. So we find ourselves with the director of Cinderella Man working with Donald Glover. It's an amazing thing.
I would like to say more valuable than anything in their portfolio since they shut down Grandland.
Well, that's a whole other story.
That's a whole other podcast. Everyone thinks that's too funny to laugh on air? Oh, okay. Should we talk TV for a minute before we go back
Fargo.
to movies?
Yeah, man.
Fargo ended its 3rd season.
Yeah.
This was very interesting. I think that I actually haven't read that much critical opinion about it, but the vibe I got was that people were worried about the show early on and then came back hard and got really into it. Chris, we last talked about it after the 8th episode, which remains, I think, having seen them all now, the best episode of the season.
Yeah, I really
It had the high
enjoyed that
point
one.
of action. It had the best Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who was probably the best performer this season and certainly the most memorable character. And then it also had the trippiness with the bowling alley scene. That was Fargo at its best in all across the board. Performance, cinematic action, and cinematic strangeness. I thought the rest of the season was kind of a miss. And I was thinking about why, and we talked about why to some degree before, in terms of like, I just didn't feel for any of these characters. I didn't buy into the world. I was thinking about the argument that I wanted to make, and what I realized was, I think you can not only defend every creative choice made this season and make it sound very worthwhile, but I think some of the creative decisions in a vacuum sound incredibly inspired and are, in a vacuum, sound like the correct responses and the correct choices to make in light of what TV has been doing, in light of what the previous 2 seasons did. Unfortunately, I think the season was a collection of inspired creative decisions without the emotional connective tissue to make them feel meaningful or resonant on a TV level. I didn't love these people. I didn't want to be in this world. Like, David Thewlis is one of our great actors. He's genius. That character was a monstrous, brilliant creation, but I didn't want 10 hours of him. You know, it was a tough hang for 10 hours. It was a cinematic performance stretched, you know, and I've heard actors say this before, like actors who say, you know, I love actually movies because I have 2 hours to give it my all. And I'd have to modulate that if I was playing this character for 10 hours or 40 hours,
Sure.
or God forgive them, 100 hours. Everyone was bringing it to a degree, but it didn't hang together.
Yeah, I thought it was a season that really only found itself at the very last moment. So I felt like he was almost writing into that last scene between Thewlis and between Fargo and Gloria, and this discussion about what's real and what do we, you know, and she's like, well, here's a photograph, this is real, and he's like, is it, you know, and they start to talk about the nature of this based on a true story idea that this show is about. But I didn't feel like the rest of the season was necessarily, I felt like that should have been the first scene of the entire season. You know what I mean? There was something about thematically where it wound up that I felt like it didn't actually reflect that over the course of the season.
Well, I felt like that conversation at the end, and I love the ambiguity at the end, but I think that conversation it's a great idea. They were well voiced. All the speeches were well considered, you know, but I didn't buy them in that moment. I didn't feel they were earned. I felt that the character, the concept of Varga as this representative of this corporate nothingness that is going to devour all of us, this wolf, it's well considered. It's a great idea for a villain. I'm not sure I got why he was in Minnesota for 5 months. You know, just these little niggling kind of TV things that I feel like with a little buffing or polishing or softening, it would have made more sense. I don't know if Carrie Coon's performance and as written Gloria Bergel was the avatar for American values and decency that she was presented as in the end.
Yeah.
There wasn't enough of her, or there wasn't enough angles or layers to her to buy that. She just was a figurehead for that, delivered the speeches of that persona, and then we could just sort of take it, but it never penetrated to me.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you guys said early on in the season too, which was that she was somewhat miscast and her sort of general tone as an actor wasn't totally right for that universe. But the moment when it started to work for me was in the 9th episode and not in the 8th. I actually thought the 8th episode was kind of a mess, and Chris and I talked about it afterwards, and I was like, this just feels like a really effortful reach towards meaning in a show that really does not have a lot of meaning this season.
Did you do an after show for our podcast?
Yes, we did. We did a little post game.
I feel
it might have been
cheated.
a pre-game.
I think I was just like, Fargo was great. He was like, no.
And I was like, no.
Yeah.
But
I
in
feel cheated
9,
on.
Yeah.
I think Mary Elizabeth Winstead, what she did and what Thewlis did together on the show was the most interesting thing, because that was also the one time Thewlis was really on his heels throughout the show, was in that showdown in the hotel room or in the hotel lobby.
That was a great scene, yeah.
And that made it click a little bit more for me. It made me believe in her character. It made me believe in his vulnerability as a character. And it made the show, it created stakes in the show. It became a show in which like a sniper rifle was as meaningful as a conversation about a bag full of money.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the middle ground of Fargo, is like it's a little bit ethereal, it's a little bit weird, it's a little bit bound in the real world, it's a little bit true crime. You know, this season was less effective than the first 2 to me, but still, you know, you don't get a lot of Vargas on television these days, so I appreciate it even if it's a little over the top.
So the one thing that's interesting by saying you don't get a lot of Vargas on television is this idea that we did in Fargo, right? That we had Lorne in the first season, that there were elements of this in the second season, of this sort of evil that goes beyond just organized crime, that there is something about greed and corruption and violence that exists inside of men, and that there's a figure that can come across this wintry landscape and trigger that in people. And it was interesting to read a few things with Noah after this episode, some of which were kind of codas for the series, because he's like, I don't know if I'm ever going to go back to this. But he seemed almost beholden not only to still the Coen brothers, which I thought was really interesting. He was still talking a lot about the Coens in the interviews, but also the mythology of Fargo, the television show, where he was like, I might do another one, but I'd have to come up with another crime, and it would have to have these archetypes in the show that to sort of be Fargo. And I thought I was actually kind of disappointed to read that, because I was like, you did this incredible thing where you took this beloved story and sliced off just the surface feel of it, where people were like, okay, well, it's set here and it's kind of about this thing. But there was never any constitution that said he has to have a devil figure, a truly good-hearted law enforcement agent, and a bunch of people who are kind of caught in between those two forces. It could have been about anything. And it could continue to be about now. By all means, make something else, do something else. You don't have to keep making Fargo. But it was almost interesting to find him imprisoned by, I cracked Fargo and now I can't get out of it.
Well, I would agree with it, but I also think that TV has to be about something. You have to have a log line. You have to have a set of some expectations, even if it's changing season to season. And I do think that Noah, and I say this as a critic who covered him and having worked with him, the way his brain works, it actually is one of those brains that is, I think that it's helpful to have a framework.
Like he's a problem solver.
Well, not just a problem solver, but his ideas go to Mars and back.
Right.
And it's good to have a little bit of a structure
Some
around
buckets
that.
to fill.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And
makes sense.
but it also, I want to be clear though, as well, I'm criticizing this season. One thing that I feel like I'm coming up against when I talk to people who are much higher on the season than I was, I'm glad we have it. There is nothing else like it. I mean, even in the finale, which I wasn't feeling, some of the shots on that road, the paper in the beginning, the way it was overlaid, these are creative flights of fancy that some you could call them indulgences, but I'm just grateful we have them, because other shows don't look like that. Other shows don't take those chances. It feels a little bit heavier to have this conversation, because it's not like we know there's a fourth season coming back and he gets another run at the gold ring. It's strange to have a close to perfect second season and then a tough third season. I think that to use the album analogy that we use sometimes, think pieces will be written that third season was best. And I will disagree.
Absolutely.
But it'll be a cool thing.
And I think that's part of a larger conversation just about in this sort of interregnum period before Thrones comes back, and just in this idea of like a macro level, like who's watching what show, that Fargo and Saul kind of existed in the same way of really respected but somewhat cordoned off dramas. I don't feel like either really penetrated into this, everybody, whatever you're doing, stop and go watch this.
I think part of that is because they were iterative, right? They were based essentially on something that had come before. And Fargo Season 3 is now the fourth version of a story that we know. So that's a lot to ask for.
Fifth, if you ever get your hands on the original network broadcast pilot starring Edie Falco as Marge Gunderson.
Was Noah involved in
that?
2002.
Oh, yeah. Who did that?
I don't even remember. It's on IMDb, but
No
they
way.
did try once before. Yeah, MGM was hot to do this, but it took them quite some time.
Yeah, that's
What a weird
fascinating.
piece
right.
of like,
It was right before. I think it was right before this.
What else can we get
Was
at
it
Fargo?
2002? Maybe it was earlier. Maybe it was right after the movie, because I think it was a pre-Sopranos Edie Falco.
Yeah, Allison, I thought, wrote about this pretty well on The Ringer yesterday about Fargo and this notion of kind of filling in the gaps that Andy is talking about too, where there's just a noble woman and there's a great villain and there's a wild card figure and there's an aspect of crime, and then there's this vision, this execution of sincere intent overcoming this demonic force, and doing that 3 times in a row. I think inevitably there's going to be some fatigue.
I just think also, the most compelling character was Nikki Swango, and everything that she did was predicated on the idea that she was truly, madly, and existentially in love with Ray.
Yeah.
I didn't buy it.
Right.
I didn't buy it from the beginning. And the show asked us to believe that and go on this journey with them. And you're either in or you're out. You either buy your ticket for the ride or you don't. Or you watch the car, either get on the roller coaster with them and you feel it in your guts, or you watch the roller coaster go around and you're impressed at people who can do it.
Sure.
And that was kind of my feeling for much of the season. I was impressed by it, but I couldn't feel it. And I do think that for me that was I couldn't get over that.
Yeah. All right, we're going to talk to Sean about his list of the best 25 movies of the millennium. But before we do, let's hear a quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode of The Watch is brought to you by Hotel Tonight. If you're like me and you are not so great at planning ahead, I've got good news for you. There's this awesome app. It's called Hotel Tonight, and it helps you find amazing hotel deals at the last minute. It sounds counterintuitive, but unlike flights, hotel rates usually get cheaper at the last minute, and Hotel Tonight helps hotels sell their unsold rooms, allowing them to pass those deals along to you. These aren't last resort places. They are actually cool, top-rated hotels that you do want to stay in. And with so many awesome partner hotels in a ton of different countries, Hotel Tonight can help you find a great hotel almost anywhere. It's perfect for a spontaneous getaway or finally going on that trip you've been wanting to take for a while. I know that I often check Hotel Tonight if my wife and I want to take a quick staycation in Los Angeles. We want to go to the beach for a weekend. We want to get out of town, get up to Santa Barbara, go south to La Jolla, something like that. Hotel Tonight is awesome for that. Because even though the app's name is Hotel Tonight, you can book up to a week in advance. All it takes is 10 seconds, just 3 taps and a swipe. So go get in on these last-minute killer deals and download the Hotel Tonight app now. Friends, it is time to talk about Sonos and the Sonos Playbase. This is how you turn your dingy living room into a cathedral of perfect audio, a home theater. When you think about home theaters, you think about the puffy movie seats and the fake popcorn stand in the back, and it's like a rich guy who doesn't have any friends, and he's just like, come to my theater. It's like, no, that's not what's happening here in this. This is how you turn your apartment, your house, whatever, into the home theater of your dreams. The Playbase is great. It just goes right underneath the television. It's built to sit underneath stands. There's no mounting required. And what it does is it just fills your room with pulse-pounding audio. So whether you're watching golf or House of Cards or playing Mario Kart or doing whatever you're doing on your television, all of a sudden it just gets expanded. It becomes this beautiful, rich audio experience. When it's not doing that, it also streams music. I don't really know what else you want from a device. Everything sounds better on Playbase. There's no wall mounting required, like I said. There's only one power cord and one optical cord, so you don't have to go nuts trying to plug it in everywhere. And you don't even have to read a manual. The Sonos app guides you through every step of setup. Everything sounds better on Playbase. See for yourself. Go to Sonos.com to learn more. That's Sonos.com. Okay, we're back. Sean, Andy. Before we know, in a little bit, I'm going to talk to Andrew Gruttadaro about good, bad movies and whether or not these few good, bad movie titles could be made in 2017.
But Sean wants to talk about what he feels are good movies.
That's right.
Good to great movies.
Yeah.
Great to exemplary movies.
Solid movies.
First question I have for you is, and I don't mean this in a self-reflective way, but because there's been a lot of variance on like what do we mean when we say best movies of the 20s.
This is where I wanted to start too. Yeah. Let's talk about this.
When you heard that we did this, were you like, these guys are going to have
these jamokes?
Yeah, are they going to have a bunch of awards fodder on their lists?
Yeah.
What was, when you say it, is there a movie that immediately jumps to mind? Like this is obviously number one.
Crash. Yes. Is this not a Crash podcast? There's a movie that jumped to my mind right away, but even in looking at what Manohla Dargis and Tony Scott did, and then especially listening to you guys, and given how well I know you both and how idiosyncratic but also like respectable and thoughtful your lists were, it kind of raised the question of what this pursuit is. As you guys know, I like to make a lot of movie lists. That's something that is fun for me. But also, you talked a little bit about the notion of rewatchability. I think there is also a fine line between best and favorite.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what is the sort of critical scale of justice here? Like, are we identifying like what was an achievement versus what is something that just makes me feel alive? And the way that you guys talked about movies, it was movies that made you feel alive.
I want to say also I'm really looking forward to your list because I am a big fan of your annual movie list that you make for your personal weblog.
It's a Tumblr, Andy.
Which is a crazy thing. Weblog, is that how we're saying it? Which is an incredible, passionate, personal project that you do every year. But it also made me excited because that means you remember. And right. I don't remember anything. One of the reasons I can't do that is...
That's so untrue.
I remember many things.
So many of your movies were like these, like you were picking out like these film forum adventures that you went on.
Well, I had to go on a by myself meeting and adventure with the Google machine to remember the movies of the year. Some of them I never forgot, but there were certain things that I just And even when we got this great feedback, people were mentioning movies that I would
true.
have liked to have considered. So anyway, that's all Prelude. I'm curious where you're at with this.
Well, it's funny because obviously anytime I see what the New York Times list looks like, what your list looks like, what your list looks like, what, say, Lindsay Zolat, she put her list on Twitter last night, and I looked at hers, and I was
Strong
like,
list.
how can I make this different?
Yeah.
Which is the wrong impulse when you're trying to be sincere about what you really feel. But I did look back at some of the lists I'd made in the past, and the truth is that I just don't feel the same way as I did then. Like the movies that I made number one at the time were reflective of the moment, and they don't really mean anything. The only movie that I think holds the same power in my mind as when I first saw it as the movie that's my number one, which is There Will Be Blood, which is probably not the most interesting movie to sort of unpack, given that it was also Manolo and Tony's number one. I think 50 years from now, we'll probably look back and say this is a top 5 movie of the century, if not the number one movie, because of what it represents, because of the story that it tells and the way that it's executed. I think also cinema history loves a great man. And Paul Thomas Anderson is like this suitable great man telling a story about a great man.
Yeah.
So that one is, it's 10 years old this year. I think it's just as resonant for people. I think they can look back on it and they can put Trump on that movie. They can put Barack Obama on that movie if they want to. They can put the story of commerce in America. They can put religion in America. There's all these different ways, these prisms to shoot it through.
The story of milkshakes in America.
Milkshakes, bowling. Imagine all these hallmarks. Paul Dano, elite fans.
So do you only do one director per one director? Directors only got one entry here?
I put 2 PTA movies
because that was an arbitrary rule, but I followed it. And then I really like Lindsay and her list had 2 Linklaters, I believe, linked, which I really liked.
And basically gave us like a don't add me about that on her list, which was funny. But yeah, I tried to mostly follow that with the exception of PTA, and I just put the Master near the bottom of my top 25.
Did you find yourself, when you were drawing from whatever databases you were doing, from your own personal lists, from the internet, was there a balance between genre? Was there a balance between like things you just adored, like say an Almost Famous, which is just a movie you can live with, versus say, how often do you watch It's Such a Beautiful Day?
So It's Such a Beautiful Day, I watch all the time. And the reason I watch it all the time is because it's probably the movie on this list that has taught me how to feel the best. And it's different. It was originally 3 short films that Don Hertzfeldt shot over the course of the 2000s that he combined in 2012. And it's very idiosyncratic. It's essentially a lot of like line drawings that are narrated actions of a guy named Bill by Don himself. Really strange, really beautiful, really interesting movie that I recommend everybody check out. Everything else on here, I think, is a little bit less idiosyncratic, a little bit more classical.
Okay.
There's a Coen Brothers movie. It's A Serious Man. For some people, the Coen Brothers movie should be No Country for Old Men. For some people, it should be The Man Who Wasn't There.
Some had Shoemaker had Oh Brother.
Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Yeah, I think that's kind of it's a little bit of a personality test to which Coen Brothers movie you pick.
I don't even want to start to unpack what A Serious Man says about you.
Yeah, there's a storm coming. That's what it says. And speaking of storms, The Fog of War is number 4 for me. That's Errol Morris's documentary about Robert McNamara. I was surprised to not see that movie on more lists.
Yeah, me too.
I was surprised to not see. There were certainly not a lot of documentaries on these lists, given that this has been very much a century of documentaries. But also, I don't know. I just think that that's a fascinating movie that tells the story of the previous century. And do you have an Errol Morris take?
I didn't have any docs in my list, not out of anything other than I don't really frequently watch them, but Fog of War is obviously something that almost feels now like a time that you can understand better, even though it is about obfuscation and so many modern warfare techniques. I did notice that you had Mulholland Drive up very high on your list, which was something that I was probably the movie that I was like, I can't believe I forgot to put Mulholland Drive on mine. We're
in a Lynch moment,
Yeah, and it's such a Lynch moment. Naomi Watts has been, around a lot recently. Do you know some of the other ones you had up in here? Was it hard for you to pick Social Network over Zodiac?
It wasn't. I had a conversation with Bill Simmons about this yesterday, and he said what Chris Ryan said about Zodiac is not true. The David Fincher movie is The Social Network.
It's my truth.
So I'm very sorry. But that was interesting. The Social Network, I think, is fits in more into the category of the things you were describing to me, which is like if it's on TV, if it's on TNT and it's 20 minutes in, I'm in and I'm there to the end.
I also just want to jump in on the documentary point. I just didn't consider any. It's the same way when I had to make top 10 lists for TV as a critic. I just didn't consider animated shows or reality shows because there are only so many spots.
Yeah.
That makes me a poor cinephile.
No, I don't think so. I think The Fog of War is the only documentary, as far as I know, in my top 25. And the reason it's there is because Errol Morris's movies are very filmic.
Yeah.
He's doing something very specific. He invented a technology for interviewing.
But I also think understanding that and watching documentaries in part, considering them in the same way you would consider a narrative feature, I think is a hallmark of a good film critic because you're seeing the world through a lens any particular year. I choose not to do that, but I'm glad that you did.
There's one question. I've had this since I really need to talk to you because I had Step Brothers, Andy had Anchorman. Mm-hmm. Sean, you have two incredible comedies. One is almost a tragedy in some ways, but you have Jackass #2 and Borat on your list.
Yeah, did you guys see those movies?
Borat should have been on more
Jackass
lists.
#2 is the hardest I've ever laughed in my life.
That is exactly why it's on my list. I saw Jackass #2 in a movie theater, and I felt like I was going to die. And movies do not do that. And when you see 300 movies a year, you never feel that way. You never feel like I have been overtaken by this thing on a screen. You can feel sad and you can feel moved and it can light up your mind with ideas, but it can't physically take it over.
Yeah.
And Jackass 2 took it over.
There's a really good video I saw. I can't remember what serious show. It might have been like Jim Norton or something like that. But Louis C.K. is on with Knoxville, and Louis is just talking about like how Jackass is like the best movie ever made, or like the funniest comedy he had seen that decade or something. And it's so great because Johnny Knoxville is like, I can't believe this, but Louis C.K. is just like, yeah, I mean, it's just like it shouldn't work. And it's the most ingenious thing I've ever seen.
But let's link them both, because a minute ago we're talking about Lucasfilm and their struggle to basically repackage something that we already love and make it feel kind of new or new enough to gross $1 billion worldwide. Borat and Jackass, when they came out, felt radically new.
Yeah.
And we could not believe they were happening. We can't believe they got away with it. And we couldn't believe how much we laughed. And I feel like, and the whiplash from Borat to Bruno, which did not feel the same way, just a few years later, and then whatever's happened to Sacha Baron Cohen's career because he can't get away with it again. Borat should be on more lists.
That's exactly right. Both movies came out in 2006. They both feel impossible right now.
Gruttadaro and I do a whole segment at the second half of this podcast where we just talk about like, could you make Roadhouse in 2017? Yeah. It's wild to think there's just no way you could make either of those movies now.
No. It's an interesting thing because the concept of comedy, this has been a very weird century for comedy, I would say. A lot of people went to what is my favorite Will Ferrell movie. I think he's probably the iconic comic performer of this time. Some people will have Bridesmaids or they'll have Apatow movies. But I think these kind of stunt-laden, idea-driven movies are more representative of where the culture's at. They're more representative of sort of YouTube culture. They're more representative of Twitter. They're more representative of like the way people joke. They presaged memes and all that other stuff. Jackass #2 is like a blueprint for how to laugh.
You can look at movies in the 21st century as either a cheapening of cinema or a democratization of cinema.
Yeah.
And I would say these movies make a strong argument for the latter.
There's
I agree.
Two more things I want to talk about before we wrap this up. One is the surprising absence in the top 25, not until 40 for you, of a movie by Noah Baumbach.
Did you make a top 40?
I made a top 50, and I also added all the other movies that I left off. I'll share this on the internet at some point. Okay. And I'm sure I'll feel really bad about this list the minute I publish it.
And I'm not trying to make you feel bad about it, but I was stunned by that because I was just like, I feel like whether it was Frances Ha or whether it would be Squid and the Whale, that you would have
Mistress America, also worthy.
All of those movies are in my top 100 of the century. I think the thing is, for someone like him, I thought of this very similarly with Quentin Tarantino. Taken together, if you said you have to sit down and watch all their movies consecutively right now, I would do it in a heartbeat and I would be thrilled to do it. I think about those movies plenty, but individuated, somehow they don't quite add up to a massive experience.
That's how I felt about 21st Century Soderbergh. I loved every one of them, but I couldn't think of one to put on.
I felt very similar. I felt very similarly even about Wes Anderson, who I think established a world and a universe that was completely singular, but bit by bit doesn't feel as right to me.
Right.
Is Grand Budapest Hotel significantly better than the Royal Tenenbaums?
Those are the two that I was.
Those are probably the two best.
Was there much debate for you about which Tarantino? You have Bastards in here, and that's my second best. But
it was Kill Bill, Whole Bloody Affair before, and I took it out, and then I put it back, and then I took it out. I think Inglourious Bastards seems like his most historical movie, so people lean towards that.
the one we can wrap up on, and Andy and I talked about this briefly on Monday, but all of us had 25th Hour in our top 10. 25th Hour, unimpeachable movie, but it really says a lot about us being how old
bunch
we
of
are.
white guys living in New York in the early 2000s?
I didn't have it. It's not on
You don't
mine.
have that in your top 10?
No.
Oh, I thought that was like number 5 for you.
No.
Oh, okay.
Number
you
5
hate
was
it.
a 4-hour Taiwanese film that you made fun of me for, probably. No, not at all. We should probably end on this because this has been so fun, and I hope more people keep sending in their lists and doing this, and maybe we should consider doing it for music or something like that because it's been
even
fun.
television.
People have said
Well,
that they want to hear your TV lists.
We should do it, but all I was going to say is, if it didn't make our 25 list, it is not safe to assume it's because we hated it. It is because we were doing this absurd thing, But I will say the reason we were inspired to do this in the first place is because the New York Times did something that should have pissed everyone off and pissed some people off, but in general has made people feel very joyful and optimistic and generous about movies.
And I feel like it
And
sent people to
rare.
watching a lot of movies, which is really cool. I saw a lot of reaction to their list that was like, I got to check that out.
And to be clear, I still won't go see movies, but I used to.
You're the
and it was a
best.
great time. It's like you have to.
No,
like,
I mean, you're the guy.
Everybody now knows the reason I don't go out to see the movies because they could hear one of them in the background of this podcast. Thank you for your tolerating that, everyone.
Okay, we're going to take a break there. I'll be right back. I'm talking to Andrew Gruttadaro. Please stick around for this half of the podcast because Andrew really is very, very funny about Battleship, Speed 2, Roadhouse, She's All That.
Did you guys talk about Michael Haneke's The White Ribbon?
No, we didn't. Would that get made in 2017?
Silent Light, is that the other one? Like 5 hours in Mennonite, Mexico?
that'd be good.
All right, Andy and I will be back on Monday probably with some Twin Peaks talk. You know, you never know with us. We'll maybe try to hit that Thrones trailer. Although, if you need to know about the Thrones trailer, boy, do I have two people who can tell you about that. Jason and Mallory have an incredible director's commentary, 12 minutes long, breaking down every frame of the Game of Thrones Season 7 second trailer. That's on the Ringer's YouTube page. It's on our Ringer Twitter account, probably on the Facebook page. Andy and I will be back Monday. Thanks as always to our good buddy Sean Fennessey.
Thank you so much, guys.
Peace.
Great job, Brainskis.
Okay, now I am joined by the Ringer's Andrew Gruttadaro, who has also become the high priest of good bad movies. Good bad.
No.
Did you go to a seminary for that, or is that just like you did you minor in that?
No, it was 6 weekends, and I couldn't talk, and I just had to watch Roadhouse and Con Air on loop.
I wonder what that's an interesting Clockwork Orange. Like, what would happen to a person if they just watched Roadhouse?
Yeah, no, they pried our eyes open.
I'll tell you what would have happened. They would have a pretty good sense of right and wrong in this world.
Exactly.
Andrew's been writing about and editing pieces about good bad movies all week on The Ringer. He's got a monumental list, the top 50 good bad movies, which are is on theringer.com. He has overseen the production of pieces, which I think are inevitably leading to several greenlit films. It sounds like Con Air with Gina Rodriguez.
Gina Rodriguez is in. This is
Go
like
Picture? Yeah.
Like it's basically like the Rihanna Lupita Nyong'o thing that happened a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
I think everyone's getting in on this.
So, Andrew, I wanted to ask, of the top 50 that you did, was there? I imagine that the response to a list like this is different than if you're just like, these are the best movies of the 25. These are the 25 best movies of the millennium or whatever, because people are arguing for a very specific criteria, right? They're like, this is. I've seen some people be like, your first mistake is to say that Con Air is a bad movie in the first place, or
right.
What's the difference in the feedback to this list to other lists that you've been a part of?
So, I mean, usually lists, and I've done my fair share of rankings. Usually the most popular complaint is you missed blank.
Yeah.
It's a little more varied because some people are a little offended that we're calling certain movies bad to even begin with.
Right.
Even though we're calling them good in a way. For example, Shea Serrano has not been bothering me all week about the fact that Bad Boys 2 is on our top 50 list.
He has not been?
He has bothered me all week.
Oh, he has been, yeah.
He is slandering me.
I'm surprised you still work here, honestly, after you put just one of the guys on there, which is like Bill thinks is better than Godfather 2.
Hey, that's straight from Sean Fennessey's mouth.
I know.
Yeah, but so people are more so being like, how dare you call Con Air a bad movie? Which is it's a hard thing to argue with on the first note, just because it's like I can't argue with your personal passion. But I think we did our best in coming up with some strict rules for a pretty vague concept.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anyone that public opinion is convinced you should have been included on the list that wasn't?
Armageddon, which is very fair, I think. To me, Armageddon didn't make the list because to me, I consider it an actually good action movie.
Yeah.
But some people
and super plausible.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, why wouldn't you send a bunch of oil guys up onto an asteroid?
Right.
But yeah, so it's that one I heard the most, and there was a lot of Jean-Claude Van Damme stands out there who came out of the woodwork and were like, how could you only have one Jean-Claude movie on this list? They wanted like 15.
So Andrew and I are going to play a game right now, which is sort of to go through a couple of films that are on his list and figure out whether they would get made in 2017. Because part of the charm of this list, I think, is like it feels like a real bygone era of when Hollywood still wastes money, unlike any industry, but it seems like a kinder, gentler time when they used to just throw money away on these things that they knew must be bad, but figured, hey, it'll find some kind of audience.
Right.
And that just doesn't seem to happen anymore because they're too busy spending like $500 million on Han Solo and firing the director with 2 weeks left,
Yeah, like Hollywood right now is just minimizing risk to the point where, nothing gets made.
Right. Yeah, and it kind of sucks because there used to be such a sort of multiplicity of experiences you could have with movies, and now it's like there's either Blockbuster or Awards Fair or like horror movies. So let's go through a couple of these movies and let's figure out whether they would be made right now. I wanted to start with Speed 2, which
yes.
I have to come forward and say I deeply care about Speed canon and the Speed cinematic universe.
Okay.
And this was
Why?
huge because I think the first Speed is incredible. And I think
Great
that
film.
Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock's characters in the first Speed had something. Like they had something real. And it really, really, this was one of the first times where I realized like the world isn't fair is when Jason Patric took over the lead role in Speed for Speed 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's not Speed without Jack Traven.
Yeah, it really isn't, and I do applaud their idea to like change vehicles though, literal vehicles.
Yeah.
I would have liked to have seen Speed 3 because where would they have gone next? Would have been
the
a plane?
world was their oyster. I just wonder whether or not it would have been Officer Alex Shaw, played by Jason Patric, who was joining Annie, or whether it would have been they bring back Jack Traven.
Yeah, I think Jack. I think he had too much stress on that bus. He was like, you know what? I'm not going on cruises.
The bus was rough. I can't remember. Do they explain in the beginning of Speed 2 where Jack is? Did they just break up?
I couldn't tell you. I don't think so, though.
Because I like to imagine that the relationship didn't work out because if you take away the adrenaline of like being on a bus that can't go below 55.
Right,
then,
they just went to dinner.
Yeah,
and
if you're just going to
about.
coffee and every time you are like at like a window at a restaurant, you look up and you see a bus go by. It's kind of like it must be like drugs or something. It's like, turns out we were just heroin lovers.
Exactly.
Okay, so what do you think are the main roadblocks to Speed 2 being made in 2017?
So, well, I guess first of all, are we going to talk about this in a vacuum as it?
I mean, however you want to do it. You're the master here.
All right. So, I mean, I think the maybe the biggest roadblock is one, you don't like you said, you don't have Keanu signed on.
Right.
And that's a tough thing.
Right.
And I guess you do have a villain though.
Okay.
And I think that Willem Dafoe signing on to this kind of ups the speed, the attractiveness of a sequel to Speed.
Right. Yeah, Willem Dafoe, who, and like around this time, so this is 97, is about 11 years on from the glories of Platoon, but it's just like obviously a really highly respected actor, now and then, and I think he had a lot of big boots to fill with Dennis Hopper, whose mangled hand, bomb crazy, villain was really like some of the secret sauce, along with Jeff Daniels in the first Speed.
Yeah.
I do love how there was a time in the mid 90s, at coming off of. I remember this really started with Die Hard, because Die Hard was such an easy, you can explain Die Hard in 5 seconds. It was such a good elevator pitch, that they were just like, just put Die Hard on a boat, or just put Die Hard on a bus, or just put Die Hard on a submarine. And there were movies like that. I do kind of long for a simpler time like that.
Yeah. So I think Speed, if we're saying that Speed is a literal sequel, and we're acting as if Speed 1 exists, and let's say Speed 1 came out in like 2012.
Sure.
So now it's a couple of years later. Speed 1 made like $350 million on a $30 million budget.
Yeah.
So
in
I think Speed 2 is probably getting made.
Yes. Yeah.
For that reason alone.
Yeah. And also, like, they probably would have done whatever it took to keep Keanu. You know what I mean? Like, that would have just been Keanu and Sandra Bullock at this point would be the equivalent of Jennifer Lawrence and Chris Pratt, which we found out is not always a good thing.
Yeah.
But that's like what we're talking about in terms of their popularity.
Yeah. So I think Speed 2 is getting made.
Okay. This is also an interesting note just I want to throw out there is that we don't talk enough about how Jason Patric stole Julia Roberts from Kiefer Sutherland at the altar. No,
we don't talk about that. I want this to actually just turn into a podcast about that.
He was, and in Speed 2, he was, I think, coming off of Rush, which was sort of his big, like, shot at an Oscar where he plays an undercover cop who's also kind of messes around with drugs, and everybody thought he was kind of going to be the next, the next big kind of like character, like the next big like best actor, in the world.
Yeah.
And he made Geronimo. And then he made Sleepers, and then he made Speed 2, and it was kind of like he was like, yeah, I can do the dramatic parts, but I can also do action roles, and it just was not a good look, and he doesn't really ever come back from that.
Did Speed 2 ruin multiple careers?
Well, Defoe's fine. Wes Anderson made sure of that, and Sandy Bullock, you can't keep Sandy Bullock down. Jason Patric did do Narc, which was very well respected, but since then has pretty much been a character actor, although a very good one. Since Speed 2, yeah.
I'm mainly talking about director Jan de Bont, who...
The thing is that de Bont's in the Hall of Fame, man. Because de Bont made Twister, he made Speed 2, and he shot
filmed,
Die Hard.
Yeah, he shot Die Hard.
Yeah.
But, like, after Speed, or going into Speed 2, is Jan de Bont, like... okay, this guy's going to be working for the next 20 years making action movies.
Oh, I mean, it's absurd that he's not. Let's just take a quick de Bont. A quick de Bont filmography look here.
It's sick.
Gosh, he directed Lara Croft in 2003, and he has not directed a movie since then.
Yeah.
He starts out and goes Speed Twister. He's arguably the most successful director in the world in 1996 after Twister comes out. He does Speed 2 right after that. Then he does The Haunting, then he does Lara Croft, and then he hasn't done anything since then. And as let's see what he did. Did he keep shooting stuff? He's been a little bit. No, not really. He hasn't even been like director of photography since then. But what a run for him! Like in the mid '90s, late '80s, he did Die Hard and Flatliners and Basic Instinct.
Yeah. He's unassailable in the '90s, but it's a little sad to see what happens post Speed 2.
So what's the next one we're going to see if we get made in 2017?
The next one, it's a pretty recent movie. Goes by the name of Battleship.
Yeah, so this is an important film to me.
Do you want to give your little breakdown of Battleship?
Yeah, so Battleship was this is the sort of, I don't know if you would say peak, because I'm never surprised by like what they will find to make a movie adaptation of, but Battleship is obviously an adaptation of a board game in which two people sit across a divider and put pegs into holes. So it doesn't necessarily feel rich with story. That being said, Peter Berg said challenge accepted and cast Taylor
Throw
Kitsch,
some aliens into the
Alexander Skarsgård, Rihanna, Jesse Plemons. It's basically like Friday Night Lights, Rihanna, and True Blood on a
Somehow
boat.
Matt Saracen didn't make the cast, which I'm so upset about.
I couldn't believe that. And gosh, who's the sort of the old grizzled? Who's Skarsgård's dad?
Are we talking about Liam Neeson?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
So you got a lot of great actors working in this. But the thing that's crazy is that like I could definitely see this getting made tomorrow.
Yes.
But
100%.
it is sort of like you would just say to somebody like, okay, here's the reason why not. Here's the reason why not to make this. But I kind of enjoy Battleship.
Yeah, it's not that bad. I mean, it's fun, and I think the cast itself, just the ensemble, is part of it. You just have these people that you're so attached to because of Friday Night Lights, and then you throw in Liam Neeson and Rihanna, and it's like, okay.
A lot of AC/DC on the soundtrack. You get Jerry Ferrera being very like overwhelmed by the situation as one of the Navy guys in it.
And the conflict is just so absurd. And they're like at a Pearl Harbor little inauguration celebration thing.
Yeah, it's like a
and
memorial
all of a sudden,
for Pearl Harbor.
Aliens come out of nowhere.
Rihanna as Petty Officer Cora Wepps Rakes has like some of the best lines.
She mostly just says like boom a bunch of times.
Yeah, she goes like, duck,
she gets quick cuts.
This was also what a run for Kitsch. I think he lost $1 billion in this time period.
Yeah.
So he comes out of Friday Night Lights, and in 2012 made Savage's Battleship and John Carter. And I don't know if they can compute the amount of money that got lost on those two movies.
Yeah. Oh, they really tried to make Kitsch happen, and I wanted him to happen.
I think I still have Kitsch stock.
Yeah. Well, how did you feel about True Detective Kitsch?
He was fine. I thought he was underused. Like I thought if you were going to introduce all those parts of his character, he needed to work it out a little bit more.
Yeah.
So they should have chosen to make it about Farrell or Kitsch. One of those guys should have like died early in the season to sort of spin things along. But I felt like you spent too much time with both of them over the course of the season. He was fine in Lone Survivor. I think he's going to have a comeback, whether it's like Granite Mountain, Hot Shots, or something.
We kind of need to forget.
He's playing David
John
Koresh.
Carter.
That could be a big one for him.
That would be cool.
Yeah. Okay, so we definitely think Battleship would get made, despite the fact that it lost like $500 million.
Yeah, I mean, there's a movie about emojis, so
sure, that's right.
Like, there's no limit here.
Okay, so what's the next one?
The next one, let's do Roadhouse.
Yes.
Probably my favorite good bad movie.
You're right. You are right. It shouldn't be favorite. It's just the best. Now I know that it didn't win, right?
It didn't win for mathematical reasons.
Okay.
But I think in terms of personal preferences,
I would say it's almost like a March Madness where like the best team loses in the semis.
Yeah.
It's
Exactly.
just like, like sometimes that happens, but it has everything you want from a champion.
Yeah. So Patrick Swayze as kind of John Taffer from Bar Rescue. Basically, right? Like
that's actually a really good way of looking at it.
He's just cleaning up bars.
Yeah.
Which he's extremely well known for, although he doesn't have a reality show like John Taffer does.
Right.
Like people are just like, oh, that's Dalton.
Yes. Even blind blues guitarist Jeff Healey is like, that's Dalton.
Knows him immediately.
Yeah, knows him by his scent.
So he goes to a bar in Missouri to clean up, and the town is extremely small to the point that they don't seem to have a police department, and the town seems to be run by the wealthiest man in town, who kind of just does whatever he wants and takes collection as if he's Don Corleone.
Yeah. It is. I mean, in that sense, Roadhouse is basically the 80s Godfather.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Yeah. I want to bring up a couple of things about Roadhouse.
Okay.
One of the reasons it would not get made in 2017 is that we have lost something over the years, about just what an R-rated movie can be.
Mm-hmm.
And the levels of nudity, sex, and really, really disturbing, gratuitous, drawn out, nauseating, but also exhilarating violence in this movie.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't even think that I can't think of an action movie that I've seen other than The Raid in the last few years. the violence in Roadhouse is closer to Green Room than it is any other blockbuster movie. And it's so violent.
It also, there's not like a real style to it either. So
no, it's just guys who are like oiled up having 10-minute karate fights by the banks of a lake.
Yeah. And just throat rips.
Yeah, throat rips. A lot of like just kicking dudes in the knees, like long, like Sam Elliott puts his hair up in a man bun and just blows out a bunch of guys' ACLs. Do you think on its story alone, forget like the rating, forget the violence, story, a notorious bouncer takes back a small Missouri town. What level of star would you need to have attached to get this greenlit?
So you'd probably need like Tom Cruise.
I was gonna say The Rock, but yeah. The problem is if The Rock did it, I would be worried about it being like PG-13, and it's just not as good.
Yeah, I think you're right that they would have a hard time duplicating the gratuitousness of this movie.
Yeah.
I was also thinking earlier today that Channing Tatum might work.
Oh my God, dude. I can't believe you just said that.
Why?
Because that's really smart.
Right? Like, he could do it.
But would you want like a straight Roadhouse, or would you want Channing Tatum doing like 21 Jump Street Roadhouse?
Yeah. See, my thing with all of these is that I don't think you can like wink at the camera while doing them. Just because it's kind of the same thing with the new Baywatch, where I think they tried to be a little too smart about what they were doing.
Right.
And you can like feel it being made, rather than if they had just literally made an episode of 1990 Baywatch, it would have been a better movie.
Now, our producer, Zach Mack, does chime in to say that The Rock essentially did do Roadhouse with Walking Tall, but I would submit to Zach, you need to watch Roadhouse again, because Walking Tall is about like saving a family, right? Like, it's like got like moral fiber.
Yeah.
Roadhouse is essentially about like killing dudes.
He's a mercenary.
Yeah. And like he has a code, but that code is like flexible. It's a malleable code.
Yeah, his thing is be nice until it's time to not be nice.
That's actually exactly what his code is.
That's exactly his code, and there is a lot of wiggle room in between those things. Like,
Roadhouse is also like an underrated Bad News Bears type sports story, because he has like a group of like shaggy dog bouncers that he trains.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. So he
teaches them.
Yeah. Roadhouse. So what's our verdict? I don't think that this is not high concept enough, but I just feel like if you got a big enough star, and I just would worry that it would ultimately be like too nice.
Yeah. I don't think Roadhouse is getting made in 2017.
Okay. All right, what's our next one?
The next one is She's All That.
Okay. All right.
Classic rom-com from the very late 90s.
So we did a little She's All That for the director's commentary videos that we made, and you can find those on the Ringer's YouTube channel, on our Twitter account, and on our site, where a bunch of us sat around, watched Roadhouse fight scene, watched a scene from Anaconda. We watched a scene from She's All That. And this is going to be weird, because you'd think it's like based on Shakespeare, right? Or no, is it based on Shakespeare, or is it based on My Fair Lady? My Fair Lady, right?
Yeah.
I forgot. Which is the one that's like a Shakespeare one?
Now I can't think of it.
Is that 10 Things I Hate About You?
Yes, that's 10 Things I Hate About You.
Okay, so it's based on My Fair Lady. You think it's a classic story. But I do kind of think that you would have to do something like gender switch this to make it work in 2017.
Absolutely.
You have to be a woman who's like, I'll pick the dorkiest dude and make him into prom king.
Mm-hmm. This movie is like I rewatched it, and it is way crasser than I remember.
Yeah,
it being.
man.
It is like the height of 90s like masculinity kind of, and just like before wokeness ever set in.
Yeah, and it's the characters in it, when you see them physically, are like, oh, it's like Paul Walker and Freddie Prinze, and they seem pretty unassuming, and they're like pretty chill, like, but they are like, there is like an insidious kind of like, yeah, her ass isn't nice enough to like, warrant my attention. It's pretty tough.
It's like the scene which I think is the one you guys watched, where they're going around being like, okay, well, who's the girl who's a train wreck enough that this bet for you to turn them into prom queen is going to be so hard. And they go around just like ripping apart girls as they walk by.
I know.
It's hard to watch, kind of.
This was a movie that birthed, like, I mean, the depth of bench here is Warriors-esque. Freddie Prinze Jr., Rachel Lee Cook, Matthew Lillard, Paul Walker, Kevin Pollak, coming off Usual Suspects at the time, Anna Paquin, Kieran Culkin, Usher, Lil' Kim, Gabrielle Union, DeLay Hill, and Clea Duvall, plus Tim Matheson. That's quite a cast.
Yeah, no, the cast is incredible.
So what do you think would have to happen to make this today?
So one, I'm extremely hesitant to say that this would get remade no matter what, just because I feel like Hollywood doesn't touch rom-coms anymore.
Right. Right. Or it has to be like much higher concept than this.
Yeah. It's just, I don't think it's going to happen on that level. I think you're right that a gender swap is probably the only way.
Yeah.
And so who are like to early 20s? Like, will we get Selena Gomez to be in this? Another thing is I feel like the whole construct of like jocks versus nerds doesn't really exist anymore. Like the lines between the archetypes have been blurred. So it's not as much of a universal thing as it was in the late 90s.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, which is, it's almost so hard to imagine, because the biggest possible like return from a movie like this would just not warrant the stress of how to figure out all these characters that you're talking about. I kind of just can't imagine it getting made today.
Yeah. Another factor, would it be better as a Netflix series?
Well,
would that happen?
It would be. I think it would be actually quite popular as a Netflix series. I think one of these 90s romantic comedies set at high school should get that treatment. What do you do when the wallflower becomes the prom king or queen, though? What's season 2? Yeah,
that's true. Well,
or do you just make it like a limited series that just happens to be 6 hours long or something?
Yeah, the idea of like a high school version of Big Little Lies is kind of funny to me.
That is pretty funny.
Like, and then it's just over. It was really, so I could see it like that. That would actually be really fun for me.
Okay.
Maybe like a Riverdale type situation.
Okay. So we're definitely remaking. We can get Battleship going.
Oh yeah, that's instant.
We could get Speed 2 going if Speed 1 had come out in like 2013 or something.
Yeah, it's got a lot of money behind it. So
Roadhouse.
No,
it's really hard. Like maybe Blumhouse would do it for like $5 million and let you do what you wanted, but it would be unless you had it like Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez are making it, or The
oh
Rock.
My God, sign me up.
Or The Rock would be in it, and he could, but that would probably be a little bit nicer.
Yeah,
I do want to throw out. You said Channing Tatum. I wouldn't mind seeing Swole Gyllenhaal do a Roadhouse remake.
Ooh, yes, I'm into that.
Yeah, maybe get Refn to direct it.
Oh no!
Only Roadhouse forgives.
Oh my God!
Was there one more movie that you thought we could get greenlit?
No, because the other movie I was going to bring up is White Chicks, and that's just a hard no.
I feel like we've established some parameters with our She's All That conversation. Okay, you know what? We have a pretty high batting average here. Andrew, this has been awesome. You can read everything that Andrew has written and edited about the Good Bad Movies Week on The Ringer right now. We'll tweet it out. This has been really cool. Andrew, we'll have to have you on again soon. But thanks for
let's
joining
do
me,
it.
man.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay, thanks for listening. We'll be back on Monday. We'll be talking Twin Peaks and more. Please check out Good Bad Movies Week on theringer.com. You can check out me, Andy, and Sean's lists of the best 25 movies of the millennium on our various Twitter pages. We'll also share that through at the Watch Pod. And please check out Binge Mode to get caught up in Game of Thrones. We've got the Game of Thrones live show at the Largo July 11th. You can buy tickets through SeatGeek. And we have a Twitter show after every episode of Game of Thrones debuting July 16th. Bye. Today's episode of The Watch was brought to you by Sonos and the Sonos Playbase. The Sonos Playbase will turn your living room into a home theater like that. There's one power cord. There's one optical cord. There's an app that guides you through setup. You don't need a manual. All you need is the desire to have everything you're watching on your television sound like you're watching it in a home theater. Everything sounds better on Playbase. Video games, sporting events, television shows, movies. See for yourself. Go to Sonos.com, Sonos.com to learn more. Today's episode of The Watch was brought to you by Redbox. School is out for summer. Redbox has you covered with video games to keep you entertained all season. With over 40,000 locations nationwide, you can rent and return anywhere. Better yet, you'll get a free one-night game rental from Redbox when you use the promo code WATCH. Swing by a box in your neighborhood, or if you want to make sure the game you want is there when you arrive, reserve it online at redbox.com/games. Offer is valid through July 6, 2017, subject to additional terms. Charges apply for additional nights. Payment card required. Getting into video games has never been so easy.